everybody, and welcome to the Search and Rescue Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Robb, and today we've got an extra special guest. I mean, all of our guests are special, but this one's extra special because we go way back. And he works for the Golder Ranch Fire District. Engineer Gabe Bravo. I guess you're not an engineer anymore.
I'm always an engineer, man.
You're always an engineer at heart.
I don't want to take away from the Marines, but engineer at heart, you're always an engineer. I got other responsibilities, but I like the engineer title.
You know what I think it is for me is because you were the quintessential engineer.
You say that to all engineers, I'm sure.
No, I don't.
We all are quintessential, man.
Remember, I kind of fell out of favor with engineers.
It didn't hurt me because I knew how you truly felt about me.
Yeah, exactly. So full disclosure, maybe I'll get into that story so we can say how it affected you.
Right.
So I was a new assistant chief of operations, and my goal was to try and rally the troops during the pandemic.
All leaders do, right?
Yes, and one of the challenges we were having is getting paramedics to work. The medics were getting burnt out, and understandably, they were running a lot of transports. There's a lot of unknowns during that time. So I wrote an email, and it was a call to action. I would like to call it a call to action, but what used to happen, and when we were in the stations together, is you'd have this engineer versus paramedic banter.
You had to.
Always back and forth.
Right.
Engineers would call paramedics road nurses. And so because I was a paramedic, I tried to rally the troops by going after the engineers a little bit. For sure. Just a little.
Like-minded folks. You take care of your people, right?
Yeah. And so I referred to the engineers in my email as the field goal kickers of the fire service.
Right.
And the analogy behind that was like, you guys know, paramedics, we know, they got one job, is to show up and get the job done in one of the most crucial situations. And so they don't really know what's going on during the day. They don't know what the medical calls are all about. They don't know what most of what we're doing is, but they have one job.
Stay focused.
And all I ask is that they do their one job. And so it was just friendly banter that I learned as a chief officer, that when you write something down and people are looking for ways to be offended, they can be offended really easily.
For sure. Absolutely.
And so that fired up a lot of engineers, and it also made a lot of engineers laugh. And I believe T-shirts were even made.
T-shirts are made, yeah. I think stickers are going around.
Yeah. Yeah. And so lesson learned for me as a communicator, as a chief officer. But I was still I was asking those questions like, don't you guys joke about that in the field?
You're not allowed to joke with us, man. You stepped out of that role.
You're right.
I'm just saying, that's probably what it was. You came out, you stepped out, man.
I became the man.
You sold out, man. You became the man. You can't joke with us.
That's right.
It's like when I scold my kids and then I joke with them later, they just look at me like, oh, really? Like, you're going to mess with us now after you just punish me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Oh, I'm
thinking it's the same thing.
I had a battalion chief like that, too, where it's like, everything's cool till it's not cool.
Exactly.
And then you're like, wait.
You're the man.
Yeah, I tried to be serious as little as possible so that people can generally be like, oh, okay, we're fine, we're good here.
Right.
But when you read an email and you're looking for a way to be offended, I gave people plenty of material to be offended.
You just loaded it up for them, man.
But you weren't offended.
So how was I affected? I actually have that memo right here. So
I would like to read this out loud.
Just to get full context here. No, it's funny. I mean, come on, man. We know in any line of work, like you'll get the core group of individuals that are just doing their job, right? And then you'll get the few that are finding something to, just brighten their day, right? And I'm not going to speak for all the engineers because I didn't, take a poll, but the majority of us knew we had a great life.
Right.
Like I just got called a field goal kicker, but yet I get to drive a fire engine for a living.
Right.
Life isn't that bad. I mean, but I guess if it did affect me, and maybe I was already doing this, is I enjoyed being an EMT. Because I had really good paramedics that I worked with. And now, probably was going to talk about this later, but the reason why I didn't take the paramedic role is and I hope this doesn't get out to too many people, but I get motion sickness really easy.
Oh,
so that's why I have to drive.
Oh, dude,
I drive all
it's
the time.
The worst
I
in the back of the ambulance.
99% of the time in my life, unless there's a day that it's raining and my wife's in the driver's seat. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna jump in. And then you're in the back of the ambulance and you're sloshing around back there, facing the wrong way. I mean, I'm taking the oxygen. Any BLS guy, I'm taking the oxygen off the patient for me. Can you pass one of them vomit bags? Like, yeah, this isn't gonna go good, right? So.
But you learned that as an EMT that it was going to be challenging,
it's going to be a little bit tough, right? It definitely takes a special person to do that job, right? Like many, right? So, but what it did do for me, as far as, and I don't know if it was the memo or maybe the memo just kind of emboldened that feeling, was I want to be a great EMT engineer. Mm-hmm. I want to be the guy that is handing you the stuff when you need it without you even asking for it, right? So I think you can take things two different ways. And like I say, if you're looking for something to, focus on, you're going to focus on it, and you have negative and positive aspects to that. But yeah, no, man, it was funny. And the thing is too, is I've known you forever. We've been in the same stations together. We've had dinner together. We know the back and forth. I mean, in the meeting earlier today, I kind of threw a little jab at the medics too, because there's fewer of us, but we're like kind of like the SEALs, right? The engineers, and
That's
we
right.
come out only when you need us, and hopefully we don't miss that kick, because then everyone hates us. But no, it was funny. But I think that no matter what or how you would have laid that message out, it was going to be taken the way they were already expecting to take it, is the way I see it.
Yeah, and it's a tough role when you get into the line of work of like administration, and when you are the man, because you did all the rest of your career as an operator, mm-hmm. and now you're in administration and you're having to do the opposite.
Right.
Now that was the worst, is like, now I got to investigate our own incidents, our own people, our own accidents, and you're investigating. If you've promoted in-house, you're doing all of that like to the same people that you grew up in the firehouse with, and you go in there with the intention of like, I'm going to be different, and I'm gonna make sure I take mm-hmm. care of the guys and gals, and you keep that frame of mind as best you can, but you're doing a completely different job, and sometimes those things completely intersect in ways that are just suck, for lack of a better term.
No, for sure. The role of management and administration, in those higher roles, like you kind of almost have to put on a different hat, mm-hmm. right? Because now you're not focusing on 5 people in your station, and as long as we get all our stuff done, we're good to go, right? Check out in the morning, come back in a day. Now you're looking at 365 days of the week, mm-hmm. and you're seeing everything coming at you all at once. And your hat doesn't just cover the people you care about, mm-hmm. right? That you've been close with. Now you got to open up that perspective, understand what's best for the district when many won't. Mm-hmm. And that's where I've been fortunate in the path that whatever reasons I've been going through, which I mean, there's always silver lining in everything, out of tragedy always comes triumph, mm-hmm. is that I've had the ability to see behind the curtain, right? To watch the inner workings of these conversations that are different from the table with the crew to when you're having to speak to stakeholders. So it is, man. I don't envy it, and it is in you. It is like I think Chief Herguy said in his was, it's a lonely place sometimes, mm-hmm. but someone has to do it, right? In order to keep things running fluid, and you're taking care of more people. How we triage people, you're taking the greater good into consideration, and it's hard for some people to understand that, right? Because they don't have that change of lens, right? Yep. They're still looking through a scope that is a little bit smaller. So yeah.
Well, I mean, not only. So with your primary, or the role I remember you most in being an engineer, it's so critical to embrace all the aspects of your role, because mm-hmm. it's not just driving to and from and knowing how to pump the truck. Right. It's like guys like you, guys like Jano. There's like a short list of people that were just solid EMTs, and we're always anticipating every single need, and being just the support background on medical calls. And what about your makeup has kind of, through your evolution in the fire service, has always made you want to understand so much about whatever role you're in? Because that's what I've noticed about you.
I mean, I think it goes outside of, the fire service. Like we spoke earlier, everyone has a story. And, I think some people measure their stories up with others and they feel like their story isn't good enough. But in reality, unless you know everyone's story, you start to see the value right in yours. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was, just the growing up aspect of not having a father figure or watching my mom work hard to feed us, and it just, I don't know. I don't know. Or was I just born like that? Was I going to be this way no matter what the cards laid out for me? I don't know, right? I don't think many of us do. We try to find these little glimpses of situations. They're like, that's probably why I think that way or did that, right? So, but no, I mean, I think it's the work ethic, man. I think it's the, seeing, a single mom raising two boys, right, alone, and just seeing, at the time I didn't know any better, but, watching her go from one job to the next, thinking that was normal, right? We're talking about lenses and scopes. And everyone has a set of lenses they're born with, and some are darker than others, right? The clarity kind of evolves as you learn. And to me, I thought that was normal. I thought, mom's supposed to do this. And, and she's just trying to survive and feed us because, I'm sure she wasn't planning on retirement and estate and this longevity wealth. It was like, I need to feed these kids because they're going to kill each other at home. And I mean, we were hangry before hangry was a thing, right? So it's right. It's like watching that and then learning from her on what we could do to help her at home, right? I mean, she taught me, how to iron and how to clean the bathroom and how to clean the house and how to do that because she couldn't do it, right? So maybe that was kind of training, right? If you do a little bit of foresight there from that point, is that, now going through, the work element as an adult, you start noticing like, I want to do a good job because, that's who I am, right? Sometimes I'm on demise. Sometimes I take on too much on my plate. But I wouldn't want it any less than that.
I was going to say what I'd noticed about you when I was an officer, and it's like I would see all of the potential in. You can see people, like you can see when they have that it factor or that extra thing that needs to come up. And what I was curious with you is I saw it early, and I'm not saying that I felt like you didn't see it in yourself, but I felt like you wanted to be such a master at your craft before you got to that next level.
Right.
And so you're like, I know Bravo's ready for engineer. What's up, man?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? How come you're not testing for engineer? And you were mastering your craft as a firefighter and as a mentor for other firefighters, and that was really important. And in most organizations and time periods, you don't have the opportunities to move up as quick.
For sure.
As this one. So I think what would happen is talent would get identified early. You'd be like, okay, you need to keep going.
Right.
You get to, because we need you at this level, or now we need you at this level.
Right.
And I respect that you're like, I want to own my craft first. And even though like it was like we would talk in the training division, or like the second Bravo test for engineer, he's going to be first on the list. Like you just knew it, and it was just a matter of time. But it was like waiting that like, when's he going to do it? But that's because your attention to detail was like one of the things, and being a true master of your craft. And it's so important in this line of work.
Yeah. And I mean, to this day, I'm still, I feel like I'm still the same, and my wife, and it's funny. It's like, did you and my wife speak this morning? Because she said the exact same thing. It's like, you need to have more confidence in what you can't do. And it's not, I don't know if it's like a humble aspect, or maybe I don't want it to get to my head because maybe that changes it. Maybe I'm like, yeah, you're right, I am the best engineer. And all of a sudden I'm
the best.
I'm no longer mastering anything, right? I think that constant humbleness of just doing a good job because it's the right thing to do can delay that progression, right? Because there was also that misconception that, he already promoted engineer, he's only a 2-year firefighter, he's not even a good firefighter. Well, he's already promoted, that fast tracking mentality. When can it be detrimental? I think in some aspects, yes, but it can also be detrimental in the sense that you are going to lose those valuable people a lot earlier in these positions that can provide that leadership or that sense of ownership. So I'm still battling with that now, which is okay. Like I said, it's my own battle internal, and I try to work on sometimes celebrating some of my wins a little bit more. But, there's no parades going on in my head. It's like, yeah, I did a good job. Well, I'm supposed to do a good job. I just don't have anything less than that. I don't think there's a point where I'm going to feel that I have hit the top on what I know, right? We're always learning. Things are always changing. You stay humble. You stay hungry. The workforce is changing. I'm cycling now into an age group that is kind of moving out, right? And we're moving in these new folks that are stronger, faster, quicker. And, so you just got to understand how the cycle works and where you land on. So whether I'm not able to pull hose as fast as I could before, I can at least share some of my tips that I learned along the way to help you as a younger individual not have to learn through the process I did. Let's knock out 4 or 5 steps and get you to 10 without having to go through 4, 5, 6, because 4, 5, 6 were mistakes. So I guess it's that realization of just kind of understanding your role. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm really happy with what I do, even with the change of pace of what my role is now in the organization.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because, one of the reasons early on into this podcast, mentally I had you on a short list as here's some people that I want to bring in right away.
Appreciate that.
Because the goal of Search and Rescue is to tell the stories of the individual police, fire, and military that can find a way to connect with other people. Okay. Because one of the downsides about an approach that's like a lot of public servants are just like you in that they're humble, or they don't want to make it about them, or they, it feels like sharing your story or sharing your perspective is like, what's the big deal in it? Right. And the whole point of this podcast is it is a big deal. For sure. And I want to capture what's going on in these men and women every day, because we can make a connection with each other. So to just start to unpack it a little bit, you came into the fire service after working in private sector for a while. Mm-hmm. You're doing great as an engineer, and I'd like to start, you migrated into training because that was a great position for you, because you're a great communicator and you care about your craft enough to educate. And then it was like something was up, something was off. Yeah. And nobody knew what it was. And I think you didn't even really know what it was. And so maybe start us off in that time period of you're in there, you're doing some engineering and you're noticing some health issues maybe, but you can't really sort out what that is. Right.
No, it's exactly how it was. It was just, something was off. I went from, being at what I considered peak performance for me, right? I felt like I can hit all my benchmarks that I needed to. I went to training because, like to your point, I wanted a little bit more, right? I felt like I was doing well in the field. I love running calls. I still miss running calls. I love the crew aspect, but then I thought, what else can I do for the district, right? Because I drank the Kool-Aid. I was Golder vested. I was going to be here and do fairy tale retirement, do my 2025, whatever, get the RV and travel with the wife, right? And that was the game plan. That was where all the eggs went into that basket. But what you don't realize is there's this sense of invincibility when you're thinking that way. You feel like this is it. Nothing can go wrong. I'm a firefighter. I'm healthy. I work out. I'm doing all the right things. Yet we are exposed to a lot of stuff that could cause us harm, but with protection, we should be fine. So it never crossed my mind that I can potentially deal with something. So when symptoms started to occur, and I started feeling a little change, you always kind of, I'm getting older. Maybe I'm sitting behind a desk too much. But there was a decline. That lasted several years until we finally discovered some answers.
And so at first for you, you're just thinking, maybe it's age. Maybe I'm just more tired. Maybe I'm just burning the candle at both ends, because you are a hardworking, motivated person. So maybe you're just tired. Right. But then it just didn't get any better.
It didn't. No, it didn't. And I measure everything, through like just activity levels right in the academy. So running or helping with 4 academies, being a part of that, it's ongoing, right? For those 3 months and stuff, plus the preparation. And then you get these lulls where now you're planning and you're creating lesson plans and all this good stuff. So I just felt like that inconsistency was probably causing some of that. But, academies, 1 and 2, when I was in there, in 15, 16, were great. I felt like I was that guy. I was the training cadre member that I needed to be for our organization. And then academies 3 and 4, I just felt like I didn't have it, and then, my wife started noticing some changes in my, strength level and my energy level. And, we do our annual physicals with our medical team that we had, and there were some red flags there, but it was always like, hey, your white blood cell counts are a little bit off. Did you have a cold? Well, my visits were always in January because I'm a January baby. So I'm like, yeah, I'm sure
Probably.
I had something, and I just bumped it off my shoulder, like, get off me, cold. But my inside just don't mess up. I'm like, yeah, I had a cold, but it didn't faze me.
Yeah.
And so, it was more of like a casual, well, hey, just, keep an eye on those. Well, how am I going to keep an eye on those, right? Like, I'm not going to get blood draws every month, right? I'm just like, okay, cool. 1 year passed, tier 1, yes. So after that continual progression over the years to a point, I think it was about that 4th academy, so probably about 19.
And so besides just the fatigue, you're also experiencing some weight loss.
Weight loss, strength loss, fatigue.
And we kind of wrote it off.
I thought I remember getting fit. Like people, it's hard to tell someone, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Like when you tell them, like, "Hey, I lost like 40 pounds," like what's usually the reaction?
They're like, "Oh,
like,
congratulations!
Dude, awesome. What are you doing, man? Like, you're complaining about that? Like I want to get what you have." But it wasn't the healthy weight loss. It was like functional weight loss.
Because you didn't have energy with that. You actually were feeling more tired and losing weight. And I remember you even saying something at one point where you're like, I'm sure you remember, but I think my natural default frame is a little hefty. I'm a little more husky.
I'm a little more husky. I'm all right with that, right?
But still, we were just like, well, you're hustling, dude. You're running academies. You're running with the recruits. Like it was just kind of like, it must just be a
like
thing.
Something's finally working. I'm losing weight, right?
Right.
No, exactly. I've always, had pride in just my strength and that, and that was the hard reality was, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to when you're dealing with something like this at any level. It's like you lose who you were. You lost that. It's like you took off a suit and now you're in this other suit, right, of a person.
Yeah.
And, you're moving heavy things without even thinking twice to thinking twice before you picked up a glass of water.
Well, so you were losing things, but you had no idea why.
We couldn't figure it out. I was a mystery child.
So how did you get to the point where you figured out something beyond just fatigue and working hard? Like, because that had to start to affect you psychologically before you could even realize that something was actually going on.
Right.
How did you get to be able to discover that?
It was there was a point when I went back into the field between a break that I was noticing that I was getting really tired on shift, like more so than anything. And my wife started to have some concerns, right? And I'm telling them, like, I can't get up and work out the guys anymore. I just, I'm constantly napping at home, and it's just like this slowdown, right? Continue visits to our annual doctors, the numbers started to increase. And it got to a point where one of the doctors said, you need a follow-up, right? I was having things happening weird with my skin, and my hands were like swelling and cracking. And I rode motorcycles, and I'm thinking like, it's the wind. I worked with my hands a lot. You're always trying to like push away the thought that there could be something wrong internally, right? On the physiological side, and just more an environmental aspect.
Did you ever start thinking maybe it was physiological, or you just kept kind of just
I was in denial. I was in denial because, I Google doctored everything, right? And I was like, well, maybe I'll try this hand cream. I'll try this. Maybe I'll do this for energy. And I'll have my testosterone levels checked, and everything's fine. And then so I'm thinking like, okay, there's really nothing wrong. There's really nothing that's like glaringly standing out. And you almost get in denial, right? Like, I got this, right? Especially me. I'm not going to speak for everyone. That was me. That was my mentality, right? Because I grew up in survival mode, right? So I always felt
Just
like I'm going to be okay. I'm going to figure out a way. I'm going to do what I have to do. Well, it came to a point where my wife was really concerned with the weight loss, and obviously the strength was being affected. And she said, she threw the C word out. And she's like, I think you may have, like, I'm worried about you. So we went in, we took it to the next level and saw some specialists that dove a little bit deeper into my blood counts and my blood lab results. And it was a rheumatologist that identified that, hey, your CK levels or creatinine kinase levels are really high.
And that's not just a standard test.
It's not a standard test. You have to dig. There has to be a special test that has to be run to actually like find these. You have to ask for them, right? Like off a menu. And they have to be like approved by the insurance too, right? Like, why are you running this test, right?
Yeah,
Well, there was a lot of support with my previous visits that actually, kind of brought that to light. So once they started noticing that and I started doing my research, a lot of it had to do with, muscle waste. Muscle waste that was happening, and it matched up. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah, no wonder I feel
no wonder I'm tired and weak, and I feel like something's going on in there. So to make a long story short, that's where the motivation to keep digging deep was. Because like I said before, like I lost my father when I was 9 and my brother was 8,
That's
and
right.
that was around the same time or age that my kids were at. So then that starts bleeding into your head. Like, I'm not going to do this to them.
And
right?
Did you know what you lost your father from? Like, did you know the disease?
It was, I know he was battling like diabetes and stuff. It wasn't anything attached to like what I was dealing with, but, he passed away of a, heart attack, at least from what I remember. I mean, I have glimpses of memory here of what happened, but the day before Thanksgiving, and, not everybody deals with things the same, but my mom just kind of just sheltered us after that and just kind of put us in a bubble. And we didn't see anyone, no family. We kind of just relocated and almost wanted to start new. And at the time, I didn't really know why, right? Because I just knew that was just normal, right? And so all that started kind of coming back to me as far as our concerns with like, all right, like we're going to fix this, because my wife's like, I'm going to kick your butt if you leave me, right? Like, it's like you have no choice. Like, you're going to stay, right? You're staying.
Sticking around.
You're sticking around, right? So that just led to just kind of just digging in, right? And the thing about conditions like the one that, they kind of find a narrow down that I may have is like there's so many other symptoms that mimic other conditions, right? So there's really no like bullseye you just throw that, that dart on. So if you look at my chart, I have like 5 or 6 different diagnoses till they finally found out that, look, okay, this one fits this piece of the puzzle. If we have to slam it in a little bit, it fits. So many people with autoimmune issues kind of have that struggle of usually a diagnosis doesn't happen anywhere between 5 and 7 years of initial symptoms. So you got 5 to 7 years of just figuring out like what is going on in my body.
Yeah.
I had doctors like telling me like, we don't know. You don't fit the age criteria demographic. There's all these things that usually happen to individuals that have this, which make me wonder that there may be more of my age group that do deal with it, but because of that 7-year spread or more, they don't get diagnosed, right?
Yeah.
So then they label you at 45 having this, when in reality, 35 you had this. You just didn't know.
Wow.
So
what is it actually? What do they think it is? At least enough to this point,
enough
or do you
to
know
start treating it.
what's it called?
The final, we finally hit a point where I fall under something that is called IBM. And when I tell people IBM, they're like, "Oh, so you have a crappy computer? Like that sucks for you, dude."
Yeah, or some bowel issue.
Like what's going on? Yeah, right. So it's inclusion body myositis.
Inclusion body myositis.
Inclusion body myositis.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which is rare, right? Weird. But then you say it and people are like, "Oh yeah, I have that." I'm like, "Oh,
Really?
where you been all my life?"
Yeah.
So that's kind of what they started to focus on handling, my team. And it's kind of like what we focused on researching at home. And a lot of the stuff did match up to like what I was dealing with. minus the age group, minus the when it should have started for me. Usually this affects adult males that are ages 50 and up, right? And, I started this battle, I feel like it just happened yesterday, but it's probably been about 9 years that I think it officially became a thing where we've been concerned about. Didn't get diagnosed with this criteria or this name of a condition until probably about 4 years ago, right, when they did some further testing. So inclusion body mass size, just body mass size, just to make it a little bit easier to understand, it's a muscle wasting condition, right? And my wife explains it the best because she has to explain it to people that ask, that don't want to ask me.
Right.
So the way she put it is, your immune system, right, which is our Navy SEALs inside of us, right, should be fighting stuff off, turn against yourself, right? It turns against your muscles. And depending on the severity of it, and everyone has different aspects that can either, exacerbate this a little bit more or make it a little bit less or slower progress, it just begins to kind of dwindle down some of your functional muscles, right? Your non-voluntary and voluntary. So where it affected me kind of hit the mark where like my hands started getting a lot weaker, my upper body started, that's where I lost a lot of weight. Not so much on my belly, which I wish I would start working there, but not yet, right? But, also your legs. I mean, there's stories of, people that are, in wheelchairs, because they do lose function of their legs. And no matter how much exercise you do, you're almost actually making it worse because exercise actually dumps some of those enzymes or those muscle enzymes as it works through it. And please, if anyone's listening that's a medical doctor here, then I'm saying this wrong, please correct me, but this is the way I learned it. So that's the constant battle, right? My internal fighters are fighting me, 24/7. So treatment for this usually falls along the lines of shutting down your immune system, right? You got to shut that down, slow them down so, you're not causing damage. Well, obviously with that means you're exposed. You're more exposed to things. There's a risk to that, right? So a big scare for us was the COVID time frame, right? And the thing with that is whether people believe in it or not, I was sicker than I've ever been sick for 2 weeks straight, right? So something happened.
Well, it was a nasty virus.
And so I got worked over, and so much to the point where I quarantined in my home, and being on these medications that were shutting down my immune system, I'm like, I have no fighters to help me fight this, right?
Oh man.
So I actually had like the man of the house talk with my 14-year-old. Because it was like that, right? So obviously with us, and the perspective that we had concerned about my current status at the time, and then something like this happening really kind of, raised a lot of flags and concerns. I'm still here. So we made it through that battle. But it was just treatment and therapy and care and just being on top of it that really helped out. And I like to say this every day, I'm one day better than I was before. And there are these, it's a roller coaster. There are these dips and these, high points where I feel really great. And then there's days that you don't feel good. But I can honestly say that I have made a lot of progress towards getting better. So
now, was that like the having to get COVID and having to fight it without an immune system? And was that your rock bottom? Did you have a mental rock bottom that tied with a physical rock bottom or any of those?
Yeah.
Before you could change that mentality that said this day's better than the next day?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a pivotal point in more of the acceptance part of being in a grieving process, which I really didn't realize that people can grieve over a lot of stuff, right? A loss of identity is a huge part of where you grieve, and we don't know, right? Because it's like, well, no one passed away in your life, or you didn't, why are you feeling bad?
Right.
But it is. It definitely is, and there were some low points there, and I think that time frame, that kind of big scare, was one of those things where okay, I'm still here. We still have things we can get done. Let's not focus on things that I'm not able to do, but let's focus on the things I can, right? And you almost got to reinvent yourself to a point where this is a new normal. And I think all of us as adults eventually get to that point, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
whether it's...
No matter what.
80, whether
No
it's you
matter
have a
what.
heart attack
Yeah.
at 40, like
Right.
everybody hits it at different stages.
Yeah, in our
about that.
heads, we're still, 18 and ready to jump off a cliff,
Yep.
right? And survive. And now, you got it's almost that humbling part of like knowing you're human. And I can either bury myself in a hole and just not see anyone and just let this condition run my life, or I can run this condition the way I want it to be. And I think that's what I've done. And obviously it's not as glamorous and awesome, and Mr. Motivation here, because I do have some bad days, right? Where I do kind of, that reality sets in on things I can't do. But my focus has always been, especially once I start seeing it start affecting my family dynamic and bringing them down almost, that I'm like, my goal is to have more good days than bad days during the week. So if I can get 4 good days out of 7 and 3 days are bad, then I won that week, right? And that's the goal. So
now if you're to try to define how you would end up defining a good day, as an example, as like a good day over a bad day, what is it that is the difference?
Yeah, it's changed, right? As I've gotten or started to feel better, the good days are better and the bad days aren't as bad. In the beginning, going from not being able to get up from a seated position, not being able to walk without tripping because you can't stand and walk and lift your leg high enough, being able to help my family with things they need to do, right? Throw the ball around as best as I can. It went to now being able to be present a little bit longer at events and show up to things and not be so fatigued. And so the good days and bad day dynamic has, kind of, changed. It's changed to what I see now. So what I consider a good day now is days like this, right? I'm just, I'm here, I'm present, I'm meeting demands that people expect of me. Sometimes a little too much, right? So then I pay for it later. And there's an awesome theory out there called the spoon theory, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, where whatever your challenge is, whatever your rock bottom is, you only have a certain amount of spoons in that day. And, if I have 12 spoons today, each activity takes a spoon away. So I got to be very wise with how I handle the remainder of them. Sometimes you steal spoons from the day before, right? And that's the way it looks, is like, if taking a shower is 1 spoon, getting ready is another spoon. Well, before I even left the door, I already spent 2. Driving to work, getting there, okay, here's another spoon, dealing with something, and you just got to kind of measure it like that and that's something that my wife and I have been a little bit more aware of, and I know it was a challenge for her because I feel like she got kind of cheated a little bit on life because, I'm not who I false advertised I was when she met me. He was a big fireman and he's going to take care of me, and now I'm lifting things for him. So that's the humbling aspect.
And what a testament to Andrea, too, right? Man. And you guys as a couple, and how much, it's a sickness and in health commitment. And a lot of people can't do that when the sickness really happens.
Right,
and you guys, I'm sure it hasn't always been easy, but defining that new normal together.
Right.
And supporting each other, it's really inspiring.
And I think that can play outside of just medical issues, right? Just tragedy. I mean, people go through things, and being able to stay there. And I have not, and I cannot cast any stones against people that can't stay. Because we've had talks too, where I'm like, this is, especially in the really dark days, and I'm like, I've made my peace that if this is not going to be good for you, and I'm dragging you down, I will still show up to your house and watch TV on your couch until your husband gets home. Because I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, we will be friends. We'll be linked forever. But if you got to make your life better, I'm okay. Because it does change that fairy tale journey that you had at the end, right? That we all kind of go for, whatever that is. But no, a testament to her, for sure. She's been my backing, my rock. And my kids as well. But my hat's off to anyone that can kind of be there for someone and still support them, even though they're not there 100% supporting themselves. Because she doesn't mess around.
Yeah.
So nope, you're getting up and going. We're going for a walk today. Yep. And I'm like, I'll go for a walk. And she makes me go walk, and I come back. I'm like, that was a great walk. I'm glad I thought of it. And she's like, oh, yeah, right. So,
well, it's a lot of family that I'm sure wants to help you in some regard. Right. And some of it, actually isn't as helpful as you would want it to be. Like you're talking to me about the pavers.
Oh yeah, the paver story. I know Chief or Fred Pierce loves that one. No, there was this point where we had these a pallet of pavers in the front that was going to be placed in the backyard, and that was my mountain. That's what I was going to climb. I would drive up, and I told everyone in the family, like, do not touch these pavers. I'm going to move these pavers. It took a little bit of a while, and it was one paver at a time, but it was such a good sense of accomplishment to feel that again, that I can do something that I didn't think I would ever be able to do. So,
and a lot of people wanted to just help out of the kindness,
which I would have done the same thing.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I would have, like, you know what, Gabe, take the day off. I'm going to move these papers for you. I get a bunch of people. No, it was more of a, in daylight, rain, darkness. I committed to, I'm going to move one paver every day, and it felt good. It felt good to see that empty pallet by myself. Actually, there was a day that my son did move one, and my buddy put that one back. He's like, "Wait, hold on, you want me to put it back?" I'm like, "I know, bro." But I know, I appreciate them. I mean, and that's the thing, is it's trying to balance that, right? The support, but also I need to have a moment for me to fail, because if I fail, it's going to motivate me to get stronger.
Yeah.
If you're doing everything for me, I'm not going to get stronger. And learning how to ask for help has really been a huge thing, and I think it really does change your perspective on how much we do need each other, right? The people that are around us, and whether it's for something small or in that time of need, like you need each other, even if it's just someone to listen to, or for them to listen to you. Yeah, because it does get it out, and that's kind of how I see this right here. I was nervous, right? I was really nervous about this, but. Yeah, reassured myself that if anyone listens to this outside, and I can hopefully provide some awareness, listen to your body, don't ignore it. I think the mentality, especially around the fire service, has changed from, if you feel something, deal with it, do something. So that's kind of what motivated me to be here. It's therapeutic for me to share this, because only a small group of individuals know me, and you know me. I'm very private, but it's. I think I'm at a point in this grieving process where I'm tiptoeing in acceptance. Yeah, and it doesn't mean acceptance means I'm settling. It just means that, okay, like I hit another hurdle. Let's go ahead and find out how we're gonna tackle it until I can't anymore. So, well,
and there's. You mentioned having to reinvent yourself and figure out what that new normal is. Right. And for somebody with your skill set and your attention to detail, and there are a lot of jobs that need that in the fire service. So being able to, I believe you're in operations or emergency management and part of the operation, but doing all of the things that still need to get done right now, and having to learn those new skills. Right. So you were able to take your base mentality and say, well, what can I do with this? Right. And I remember early on, you just started being like the guy for scheduling. And for anybody that has to do scheduling for a large department, it is a nightmare. Salute you. And all the nuances from getting all the coverage at all the stations with all the certifications, have the whatever policies and procedures are in place for bidding or who gets first access to overtime. It is a beast. That's a beast. It definitely is. And you need somebody that knows shift work to be great at it. And so that was kind of like the first thing that you chomped on in emergency management, is how can I figure out a way to still contribute at a high level, and you're killing it, because that's a tough job. No, definitely. I mean, that's the silver lining in all this, is like just having the opportunity to, maybe my fairy tale story of just being an engineer, captain, staying in the crews, retiring, moving on, and then that's it. That was my entire lens of the fire service, to be able to peek behind the curtain, see the inner workings of what actually makes that fire engine run and run a call. And I attribute that to, just that training experience, being in that instructor position, seeing what goes into putting this together to make sure that our folks are safe out there, and then just carrying that administrative work into now
the operation side of things, right? And just being a conduit of information and callous to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, because I still have fire brain. I'm still, I like in my head, my 911 calls are different now.
Yeah.
I was for almost 15 years, you respond and you do the best you can to make the situation better. And I get people that call me all the time now. My phone blows up. My email is constantly going. And I treat it like when I used to run calls. I don't care if this is the 15th time that I've did a lift assist. That's their first time to call me. So I'm not going to let them feel that there were 14 before, because that's not fair to them.
Yep.
And I do the same thing now on the administrative side of being a support to the folks, boots on the ground, to the administrative staff, like just being that, like, okay, what can I do? This is my 911 call, Sometimes I get too many, and it's okay.
You get a lot.
But I try to, like I say, it's a good feeling that I'm still helping.
Yeah.
Because that's something I can't get rid of. I don't think I've ever not had this feeling, even before the fire service, that if I get a call, my thing is that I say to everyone is, I'm not going to call you after hours. I'm like, look, if I don't answer the phone, I'm busy. If I answer the phone, I'm not.
Yeah.
So just look at it that way.
Yeah.
And
fair enough.
I try my best to balance home life and work life, but it still makes me feel like I am being needed and resourceful and still there for people, right? So yeah, the scheduling thing was a challenge, and I had a lot of good support from people that knew that I would do a good job, and I was mentored by our previous scheduler that taught me so much, and we were able to weather some pretty tough times when our scheduling program crashed, and it was awesome. We built a great bond, and we worked together, and then now it's starting to morph into like, what can I do to make your primary role easier, right? If you're a battalion chief and you need to be out there with your crews, making sure and there's an admin piece that you just don't have time to go, let me take a crack at it. Let me help you out, and that's where that support part comes in, is I'm not here to step on toes. I'm here to make you better, make your life easier, because if I'm sitting behind a desk for 40 hours, you're there on tour or on shift for 2 of those days, but I'm there for 5. Let me carry this forward for you. Let me at least keep that momentum and that consistency going. So it's been working great. I guess you'd have to ask everyone at work how they feel, but
I know how they feel.
I think it's working great, and definitely a great opportunity for me to expand that lens, right? To add more clarity to my perspective of the fire service. I'm sitting in different meetings, listening to leaders speak on situations that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that if I would have just stayed in the firehouse.
Well, and a lot of people in your same situation, and I think that's some of the point in being able to share your story, is when you identify so much with who you are as a firefighter. Right. You were so much an engineer that I called you an engineer when you first came in here, because that's just
my first name.
Bravo equals engineer.
Yeah, I changed my name formally.
And a lot of people can't get past that. So like if they were to be in a similar situation, they'd just be like, well, I got to leave because I can't be around the fire service all day if I can't do engineer Bravo. And so first of all, for me, that's true servant leadership. Is the ability to recognize, okay, what can I do, and find a way to contribute and still be a part of your team, even though it is not the ideal or the fairy tale that you had asked for. Right. To say, not only am I still going to do this, but I'm going to do this at Engineer Bravo's level, and find a way to support this team. And there's no better example of leadership than when somebody gets hit with hardship like that and finds a way through it and finds a way to reinvent yourself. So hats off to you, man.
I appreciate that. And like I said, there are many people like you that have supported me through it and I've learned from. And, just a shout out to my engineers is we're resourceful, right? Mm-hmm. When something goes wrong, we find a way to make it better or to fix it. That's one of our main roles, other than driving those big fancy engines, right? But it's like, you're a problem solver. And I think if I can, maybe my body for now, I'm definitely getting stronger, getting better, making some leaps and bounds in what I was. But let's use my my experience and what I can do to just, help out, right? Just instead of on the fire ground with hoses and tools and rescues, is what can I do with that same mentality to fix problems, to at least provide solutions, another voice. But that's exactly it. And like I said, there's good days and bad days. And the point of, has it crossed my mind that maybe I don't need to be here anymore because I can't be who I was? It crossed a lot, but then it came to a point where it's like, no, I can definitely still provide some kind of service and support, and it's been going really good. At least I'm happy. And the good thing about it is, if you do it for the wrong reasons, like we always say, right, you got to want to do it first. You have to have the want. Yeah. And if you want to do it, everything else falls into place.
Yeah. I think it goes with, we don't talk about it a lot because it's just what a lot of administrative and executive chiefs feel is part of the job. You're just supposed to support the people. But in a situation like what you've had, you've also had a lot of administrative support from Golden Ranch Fire District. And I think that's a testament to who the fire district wants to be, is right. Like, you could take one hand and just be like, oh, well, that stinks. Or you could all be continually working together right. to figure out, let's figure out, this guy's got to take a knee. Let's figure out how to help him. Right. And it goes to everybody in the organization. And so, like, I have to give props to Golder's administration for figuring out ways to continue to help their people.
No, for sure. I mean, it's there are things that the general public, even the general fire service, don't see that the administration does for individuals, right? Because it's not something like we don't celebrate. We're not going to blast that, right? Mm-hmm. There's some things you don't need to blast out. It's just the right thing to do. Shout out to the admin, to the labor, to the boots on the ground. I mean, the support is great, and it just inspires you to keep wanting to do more, right? And it motivates you. But no, that's it. And like I said, every day I take it one day at a time, and I'm just trying to make tomorrow better than today. Mm-hmm. That's the way it works. Yeah,
and I think the listenership being very, we're all across the country, and right. So you say, maybe hit up the administration if you've got a particular problem with a firefighter has a similar situation. Chances are other fire districts or departments have right. walked through something similar. Right. But if we don't know it and we haven't talked about it, we haven't found a way to bridge that connection. So I think what's great is you being willing to share your story, because that's not easy.
No, for sure.
And nobody else can share it for you, but the whole purpose is, if you can use this to help somebody else in a similar situation, then it makes it worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The butterflies in my stomach, are going away when you think that it can potentially help someone. Mm-hmm. And it's just globalizing the fire service, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we sign up for this, career, even any type of emergency services or public services, your intentions are to help people, right? And when you're the one that needs help, it's kind of hard to accept that it's like, whoa. I run on people like this. How am I the person that needs it? And to see that it does get reciprocated back from people in leadership positions, administrative, in a way that it's like, okay, not only am I helping people, but they're helping me. And it just comes back full circle. So I definitely have a lot of appreciation for everyone in my life, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. Because if it wasn't for anyone that at any given moment picked up that phone or gave me that hug or gave me that sense of encouragement, or we relive some stories from back in the day, like it just, it inspires you. It inspires you to be like, okay, man, I'm still in it. I'm not a lost person that just kind of just floating through the world. Like I have a place, and I think I've found my place for now, and we'll see what tomorrow brings, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done an amazing job with the hand that you've been dealt, and that's why I needed you to be one of our first guys on here.
Oh, man.
Because we're dedicated to helping those that serve, and you sharing your story is doing just that.
I'm setting the bar low, so anyone else is just going to be that much better.
No way, man.
No, this is good. It's been really good, and I agree. I think that the sharing is the biggest piece here. Yeah, the sharing.
Yeah. So I guess for our listeners, you can always reach out through the podcast and the different, we're on YouTube. We have something as simple as throw something in the chat. Find a way to get a hold of the people that we're talking to on these, and I'll help be the bridge for that, because we've talked, you want to be a resource for anybody that might have some similar questions. Right. And so I'm not just going to blast your cell phone out here, but what I want to do is is with your authorization, just find a way to connect with us through the different media platforms, and I will get you in contact, and we'll find a way to help pick your brain on stuff like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have anything officially out there yet for this, but to be able to champion something that, helps others kind of discover situations, especially, someone that kind of got blindsided by this. Yeah, I'm more than happy to help out. And there's other individuals that have dealt with similar things that have done the same for me. So I'm definitely wanting to pay forward.
Awesome. Well, see, that wasn't that hard.
It wasn't that hard.
It wasn't that scary. I know we got the lights and we got the cameras and
duck on why you should see my legs right now. I'm just flipping around, nervous. But no, this is good. This has been a really good experience. And for one, we go back, man. So I would not take advantage of this moment and just come and have another chat with you.
Yeah. And next time, maybe we'll talk about, you were one of the funnier dudes that was in the firehouse, and you had kind of this kind of sneaky funny. It was like this dry sense of humor.
That went away. That went with the condition, man.
And now, so you shed that also?
Shed off, well,
you got to
like
bring that back.
Rattlesnake. Yeah, I don't have it. The kids clown on me all the time. Actually, that's what my wife said to me. She's like, "Don't try to be funny."
What?
I'm like, damn. I'm like, I don't even try. I'm just funny. But I guess I'm not. I'm just am, right? And then my son was like, okay, don't be a robot and just be cool. Just be loose.
But you've taken all of their advice.
I hope so. I mean, they're going to be my biggest critics, but no.
I'll protect Andrea from it, and I will say we're not going to go into jokes this time. But as we're getting the muscles stronger, we're also going to get that humor back.
We'll see, man.
And we're going to have story time.
It's just dad jokes now, man. That's all it is. That's what I relish in. The cornier, the better. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. If you do have an opportunity for me to come back, and maybe we can share something else. And
anytime.
I appreciate that.
That's what we're here for.
Awesome.
Bro,
thanks, brother. Appreciate
thank you so
man.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you hanging out.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And like we said, leave in the comments or the chat some of your situation and your willingness to get a hold of Engineer Bravo, and we'll make sure that it happens. That's all we got for this episode, and we will talk to you soon.